Why project management skills are valuable for leaders. Hey there, I've a little secret to share with you. Project management skills aren't just for project managers. They're actually useful for everyone. You know what? If you've ever planned a kid's birthday party, organized a family reunion, or even coordinated a business conference, congratulations! You've managed a project without even realizing it.
We all do it more often than we think. Now, I know when we hear project management, we tend to think of big, complicated construction or IT projects. But here's the truth. If you're coordinating any kind of event or activity with a specific start and end date, you're actually managing a project. It's pretty cool, right? Hey, I'm Dana Brownlee, a certified project management professional with decades of experience in the field. I've taught project management courses and presented at conferences all over the US and beyond. And you know what's interesting? Throughout all my years of teaching, I've had more requests from non-project managers who want to learn project management than actual project managers themselves. Isn't that surprising? Think about it for a moment. Don't most leaders need to understand things like how to create a realistic schedule, analyze risks, or run an effective kickoff meeting? And what about managing tasks, leading status meetings, and building a strong team culture? It all makes a lot of sense, right? That's why I've developed specific training that focuses on these practical and impactful tactics and techniques. It's not about explaining project management from A to Z, but rather cherry-picking the most useful tools that can be applied by almost anyone. If you're interested, let's get started. Why project management skills are valuable for leaders. There are various project management associations and schools of thought, but most projects follow the same 4 general phases: vetted, plan, design and execute, and close out. Let's talk through each of these, but more importantly, think through how they might apply to the work that you do. If you asked most professionals, what's the first step in project management? People will likely answer, planning. That's where they make their big mistake, because the first step should always be some form of vetting. People work on dog projects all the time, because the idea was never properly vetted to determine if it should even be a project in the first place. Projects take valuable time, money, and resources. And not every idea should be automatically approved to be a project. Instead, during vetting, the proper stakeholders should consider risk, weigh the expected benefits against costs, consider the cost of inaction, and ultimately decide if a project is appropriate. Careful vetting should filter out the poorly thought-out projects that often turn into a huge waste of time and resources. Now, once an idea for a project has been given the green light, we should initiate project planning. Here we should work through all those traditional planning activities, like assembling the right team and team norms and ground rules, developing schedules and documenting a project charter, confirming an appropriate plan for change management, and also managing suppliers and stakeholders and communications and the other appropriate project areas. While we might be tempted to rush through planning and get right to work, leaders should fight that urge and respect the need to take appropriate time to plan. Consider some major events, like the Olympics, that take years to plan for only a couple weeks of output, or a wedding that can take 6 months of planning for only a few hours of output. As someone wisely said, if you fail to plan, plan to fail. The next phase of work is often focused on designing, building, and/or executing on the plan created in the previous phase. Here the team will begin to do the work that was outlined in the project plan. We might be building a house, developing a new internal system, or even throwing a party. Truly, this is where the deliverables get created, and testing and deployment happen for technical projects. Lastly, during the closeout phase you'll want to perform a review of what went well, and what you might do differently next time. You might want to compare estimates to actuals to gauge how well the team estimated. You want to archive work products and outputs, and wrap up any administrative tasks, and support transition of team members to other work. You don't need all the formality of traditional project management, but it can be very helpful to leverage this basic framework to make sure you're not omitting critical elements that could be the difference between success and failure. Apply the project management cycle to provide structure. Let's dive into each of these phases in more detail and see how they can be relevant to your work. If you were to ask most professionals, what's the first step in managing a project? They'd probably say, planning. But here's the thing, that's a big mistake. The first step should actually involve some sort of vetting. You see, people often find themselves stuck working on lousy projects because they never properly checked if the idea was worth pursuing in the first place. Projects require time, money, and resources, so not every idea should automatically get the green light. During the vetting phase, it's important for the right people to analyze the risks, evaluate the expected benefits versus costs, consider the consequences of doing nothing, and ultimately decide if a project is worth it. This careful vetting process is designed to weed out poorly thought-out projects that end up being a colossal waste of time and resources. Once a project idea has passed the vetting phase, it's time to move on to project planning. This is where we complete all those traditional planning activities, like forming the right team, setting team norms and ground rules, creating schedules, documenting a project charter, establishing a plan for managing changes, and handling suppliers, stakeholders, communications, and other important aspects of the project. While it may be tempting to rush into execution and skip the planning phase, it's crucial for leaders to resist that impulse and recognize the importance of taking the time to plan properly. Just think about major events like the Olympics, which require years of planning for just a few weeks of action. Or consider a wedding, which can easily take 6 months of planning for just a few hours. As the saying goes, if you fail to plan, plan to fail. The next phase is all about design, building, and executing the plan that was developed in the previous phase. This is when the team starts putting the project plan into action. It could involve constructing a house, developing a new internal system, or even throwing a party. This is the phase where the actual deliverables are produced. And for technical projects, it's also the time for testing and deployment. Lastly, during the closeout phase, it's important to review what went well and identify areas for improvement in the future. You might want to compare the actual results to the initial estimates to see how accurate the team's predictions were. It's also a good idea to archive all the work products and outputs. Wrap up any administrative tasks, and support team members as they transition to other projects. While you might not need all the formalities of traditional project management, leveraging this basic framework can be really helpful in ensuring that you don't overlook any critical elements that could make or break your project's success. Encourage realistic time estimates. One of the biggest challenges that many leaders face is getting important projects done on time, and a big part of that depends on how accurately tasks are estimated. Project management methodologies often promote estimating techniques based on weighted averages because they tend to be more accurate. Let's look at an example that shows how you can use the concept of weighted average estimating. Imagine you're leading a project where your lead developer, Ari, plays a crucial role. As you're creating the project schedule, you need to include an estimate for her design work. Now, you could try to estimate it yourself based on what you know, but that might be a risky approach. Alternatively, you could ask Ari to provide an estimate based on her knowledge of not only the work involved but also considering her other commitments and workload. That would be better, but there's an even better approach. Instead of asking Ari for just one estimate, ask her to give you the best-case scenario, the worst-case scenario, and the most likely estimate. This approach is effective because it puts the estimate into context. Without considering all these possibilities, you won't really know if her estimate of 2 weeks is just wishful thinking, an overly cautious estimate, or somewhere in between. Some project managers like to calculate a weighted average estimate, which is the best case estimate plus 4 times the most likely estimate, plus the worst case estimate, divided by 6. As an example, if the best case estimate is 1 week, the most likely estimate is 2 weeks, and the worst case estimate is 8 weeks, the weighted average would be 2.83 weeks. But even if you don't want to be that precise, simply asking for and discussing all 3 estimates tends to result in more accurate estimates and also brings up important factors that may affect task completion times. So, whether you go through the weighted average calculation or not, the simple practice of asking for and discussing all 3 estimates generally leads to more accurate estimates and highlights key factors that can impact the time it takes to complete a task.
Would you like to upgrade your career in project management? Increase your project management skills and become a valuable leader in project management. Here is the right place to get PMP certified in next 30 days. Would you be interested to know more? Please contact us to www.icertglobal.com or email to info@icertglobal.